welcome everybody. We'll give a few minutes for the attendees to just rock up. Just as a little warm-up exercise while people get themselves ready. We have the chat window, and everybody is welcome to go into the chat window, click on the everyone in the chat window, and just tell us about what their favorite pet is. I will tell you now that my dog may well decide to make a guest appearance on this talk. At the moment, she is asleep at the side of me, but if I was to mention her name, she'd probably want to come and say hello to everybody. But feel free to tell us about your pets in the chat channel and just break the ice and get used to using the chat channel. We'll also be picking up questions and comments and things from there during today's session. We'll get started in a second. I'm just letting the attendees crop up a little bit. So, as you can see, I'm joined by some very, very famous people today. You've got me as your guest host in that respect, and some of you may know who I am, some of you probably don't. So I'm Phill Fox, and without further ado, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'm part of the Adaptivist group. I'm a principal customer success advocate, which means my job is all about making sure customers are happy. And so they brought me along today to make sure that you are happy on this webinar and this session. So that's all about today. And with me are some colleagues, and if you want to introduce yourselves, and if we take them in the order that you're on the slide, feel free to come on off mute and just introduce yourselves. So Ken, over to you first.
Over to me. Well, hey, I appreciate that Phil led with there's a bunch of famous people here and then talk about himself. That's cool. I love that, Phil. It's great. Yeah, hey, Ken, senior technical consultant here to Adaptivist, and enthusiastic script runner, user advocate. They call me a guru, but that seems like a strong word. I'll get there someday. But for the purposes of this call, that's who I am. That's what I'm up to. I think Bobby has a lot more interesting things to say about himself, so maybe I'll turn it over to him.
Not much pressure. Thank you. Yes, my name is Bobby. I'm a customer success manager, senior now for ScriptRunner. So working with all of the various ScriptRunner tools, showing people how they work, and I'm going to go through some demos today. I'll pass it on to Jasmin.
Hi, I'm Jasmin. I'm a software engineer on the enhanced search team. And I have a dog called Lola, if we're talking about pets, but she's locked away in another room, so she can't disturb me today. And I'll pass on. Is there anyone else?
Jasmin, you've just done. We've got Kristian, who's managed to sneak in despite not being on the slide, because he felt that today was so important he would give up a day of his holiday and come and join us. Is that right, Kristian? Have I got the right thing there? This was so important you gave up a day of holiday.
You have, yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Hi, I'm Kristian. I'm a front-end developer for the ScriptRunner for JIRA Cloud team. And I have a dog called Jet, who's a lurcher, and he'd be my favorite pet.
And then, of course, we've got Jill, who's here to keep us all in line and make sure none of us misbehave and we tell you all the right things. So do you want to just tell us what your role is, Jill, apart from cracking the whip and keeping us all in line?
Sure. I'm the senior product manager for ScriptRunner for JIRA Cloud, and yeah, feel free to ask me whatever questions you might have. I'm happy to answer them in the chat there. Yeah, thanks.
And we have Lisa and Kirsty who are hiding away in the background to keep the track of all of the wonderful comments and questions that you fire. So I'll ask them briefly to come on camera and just wave and just let us know that they're there. So there's Kirsty and there's Lisa, and we'll hear little bits from them later on. So let's move on. A little bit of housekeeping to just remind everybody. Don't forget that, like me, you are on mute when you first join. Yep, I did forget. Slap wrist for me for not checking that on my first statement. Make sure that when you use the chat function, you do it to everybody. If you do it to the panel, we may or may not see it. So just be aware. We're going to be answering various questions in this chat, and we'll cover what we can in the time that's available. But any questions that we don't answer, we do take a note of, but please do drop them via the official form and make sure that you follow the email that will come after the recording. And so on to the first question. There's a lot to break down in this. Is it possible to iterate through pages when calling the JIRA API? And somebody wants to find out the sum of the story points added after the epic start date, and it returns more than 100 pages. So with this one, over to who wants to answer this one, which I believe is you, Ken.
That is me. Thank you. Okay, well, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about pagination, the use case therein. I can put up a blog post, but that's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there. So let's talk about pagination, and then we can look at applying specific use cases in a blog post or any future ScriptRunner is a possible session. But first and foremost, what is pagination? Pagination is, I mean, it's not just Atlassian's solution. It is an industry standard solution to what happens when somebody tries to retrieve too much information from an API. For example, if you had a significantly large JIRA instance and you told JIRA, okay, using the API, I want all of the issues. If you had a million issues in your instance, you'd probably crash something. So pagination is the API's way of returning literally pages of information, one page at a time, with a set number of items on each page. So if we can call the appropriate number of pages using the API and pagination, then we can address the API's need to not crash your system, but also still retrieve all the information we need. So let's take a look at an example. Okay, so I've tried to zoom in on this as much as I can, so you should be able to see it. Let me know if you can't. But this is an example of an API call that I made to a test instance that uses pagination. We know it uses pagination because up at the top, we see a couple of pieces of information like max results, like start at, and the total and is last. Well, that may not make much sense to you yet, but I promise it will by the end of this. Max results is literally how many pieces of information do I want the API to return to me on each page. There is a hard limit set by the API on the server side, and there is a point at which you cannot tell it to retrieve more information per page. If I told it I wanted 5,000 results per page, it's still going to limit me to 50 in this case, because 50 is actually the max number of max results. But not all pages are the same in that way. Start at is the point in the list at which we would like the page to start retrieving information. For example, if there were 3 pages of 50 results, and I wanted to start at result number 100 and have it return result number 100 to 150, I would tell it to start at page 50. And given that our max result is 50, it would go from 50 to 100. Makes sense? And the total is the total number of items that the API can possibly return. In my little demo instance, there are 155 boards as an example. And finally, the isLast attribute simply is a way of the API telling you whether or not you have reached the last page of the results. So all of these will be very useful when I get into my little scripting demo. Just before I do that, I did want to point out, so this is an example of the API using pagination, but if I call the projects, there is no pagination. It just, as many projects as are in the instance, it will return those in one call. So FYI, if you don't see the pagination information, it probably isn't going to paginate. So this is in the ScriptRunner for Cloud ScriptRunner console. This is the most basic version of calling that same API request. So all this is going to do is return the first 50 results, because it starts at 0 by default, and by default it returns 50 results per page. So that's great if what I want is on the first page of results within 50 results. Otherwise, I need to add some pieces to this code to get all of the results that I want. So the first question is, well, how do I actually interact with, or how do I make use of the attributes such as start at and max results? So to do that, we add a question mark to the end of the actual API itself, and then for every attribute that we want to deal with to tell the API to use, we use an and. So this is simply telling start at page 50, as I discussed. It would return results from 50 to 100. If I wanted to also affect the max results, I would do something like 50. It's not going to do anything because the max results already is 50, but I could bring it down to 10 if I wanted. That's sort of how that works. So in order to actually append the attributes to this API call, we add a question mark, then we start adding and signs and whatever elements we want to deal with, we add them to the end of the call. Okay. So that's all fine and good, but how do I get more results? How do I go from this to actually telling it to give me all the results? Well, what we need to do is we need to loop through all the pages. So we define a couple of variables. We define a paginating variable, which means that this loop will loop until we tell it not to. And while it's looping, we tell it at first we start at 0, give me the first page of results, the first 50 pages. And then next time it loops, we have incremented start at by 50. So instead of starting at 0, it would start at 50 and give me 50 to 100, so on and so forth. So we run the loop and we keep adding 50 to the start at, and it keeps giving us the next page of results. That's the, call it the crux of the main idea of pagination. We just get as many pages as we need to, and within this, we would do something with the results that are contained within each page. But there is a problem with this code. The problem is, how do we tell it to stop? Because this is going to run forever. It's just going to keep adding 50 to the results, and it's going to keep going because there is no way to tell the pagination loop to stop paginating. So in order to do that, we need to examine the is last element that we talked about. So again, it's in here, and if I called something like start at 150, is last would be true because that is the last page of results for my particular demo instance. So when we for each time this loops, we add 50 to start at, which means that we are increasing by 50. We're getting all the pages, but at the end of each loop, we're checking to see if it is in fact the last page. And if it's the last page, then we can stop because we don't need to paginate anymore because there's nothing left to paginate. That is, in a nutshell, how we deal with pagination and the JIRA REST API. But pictures being worth 1,000 lines of code, let's run this and just take a look at it real quick. So it's going to iterate through all of the pages that are contained within this REST API call, which again, we determined there is 155 results, which means when it spits out the results, these are simply the board IDs. For simplicity's sake, it goes all the way down to 155, despite the pages being maxed out at 50 results. That's how pagination works. Anything else that I guess comes up is really a choice of what you want to do with the results each time the loop loads, right? The pagination is simply telling it to return all the results. What you do with those results is up to you. But that's the basics of pagination. And as I said, the specific use case, I will try to answer in a blog post, or we can talk about it next time we have one of these sessions. Were there any questions that came up during this that I missed?
I don't believe there were. I didn't see any.
Okay.
And I'm sure somebody will interrupt us if there are. So thanks for that introduction.
Okay,
If you'd like
great.
to stop sharing, I'll pick up and introduce the next question.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so Ken has given us a quick introduction to pagination and how to do that with ScriptRunner for JIRA Cloud. So the next question that we have is about issue status start dates. And with this one, we're going to have Bobby is going to pick this one up. And I believe you're going to give us a little demo, Bobby, as well.
Yes, I am. So I'll just take over the screen share. And whilst I'm doing that, I will thank Kristian as well. Due to some minor miscommunications, we both ended up having a crack at this one, which is why I'm going to show you 3 different variations of how you can answer the question, mainly because there is some interesting conversations around that. So as you can see, I have time and status 3 times. So obviously to display a calculated value like how long has my issue been in this particular status, we're going to be using a scripted field so that we can define a script that performs that calculation and then presents that value. And then if I go to a issue, you can see here, we've got it 3 times. So I'm going to talk through each 3 variations because, as I said, there's some things to mention around those. So, and yes, there being multiple ways to approach a problem is very ScriptRunner as well. So the first one, which is a straightforward, we are going to display the value on your issue, is this one here. So this one, actually what this script does is it goes and accesses a field called status category change date, which is a specific field on your JIRA issue. So you can actually go and very specifically get that value from the JIRA issue itself. So that's a straightforward API call to get that date. The rest of this script is very simply getting that date, formatting it correctly, which is using code found on the library, and then doing some simple calculations to say, this is how many days are in that time frame, and this is how many hours, and then displaying it in an easy to read string format. So that results in version 1, 13 days and 4 hours. It's currently been at status backlog. And that is a straightforward answer and as simple as answers you're going to get towards what the specific question was for the status itself. The second version, we're now taking into account that people might want to actually search on the value that you get returned. So it's all well and good me knowing that it's been at 13 days and X hours, but I now want to find every issue that's been at its status for 10 days or more. So here we have to take that into consideration. So this script is exactly the same, gets exactly the same value from the API call, but all we're doing here is we're outputting a single number, just the number of days. In this scripted field, what we can do is we have defined the search term, time in status v2. And now because we're returning a number, as opposed to the last one where we're returning a text field, we can do some searches on that. So I can go to the issue navigator and I can say time in status v2 is greater than 10. And this will return the issue that I've got here because it's obviously greater than 10. So that's a consideration to take into account when you're doing this. Are you wanting people to be able to search in it, or are you just wanting a nice, easy to read string format based upon your requirements? The third way is the way that I originally approached it, not knowing that there was a specific field for the last status change, is being able to show how long any field has been at a specific value. So as opposed to the status, if I wanted to see when was the description last changed, when was this custom field last changed, etc. So the way I approached this was, rather than making a call for a specific value, we go and make an API call for the change log. So this gives you all of the changes that have been made on that JIRA issue at any given point in time. We reverse that list because it starts from oldest to newest. So I want to go backwards, so I need to flip that around. And then we loop through until we find the first item that contains the field that was changed that we're looking for. So in this case, it's still status. So this line here will get us the first change item that comes in our list in order from most recent to oldest that contains the status field change. From there, it's as simple as getting the date that was applied to that change log, again, doing that calculation and outputting it into a simple string value. So that is how you can take one question and come up with 3 different answers.
So thank you, Bobby. And also thank you, Kristian, for your bit in there as well. I asked the question a little bit tongue in cheek. If you ask 2 engineers to solve a problem, how many solutions do you get? And as we've just seen, the answer is 3 in this instance. And as we saw earlier with Ken's, other people have suggested other solutions. So remember, even if we show you a solution on here, that does not mean that this is the only way in which to solve a problem. There are often many ways of solving the same problem, and it's absolutely appropriate that you should think about which one is best for you in your respect. So back to the next question, and hopefully that's answered. So this time we have a question that's coming from the Atlassian community this time, and it's, is it possible to add a card color to a board issues when a subtask is blocked by another issue? So something here feeling very much like using the flagged impediment, but I don't know because I've not actually solved this problem. So I'm going to let Jasmin tell you all about how she went about solving this problem. Over to you, Jasmin.
Thank you. If you just head over to the next slide, I've already pre-recorded my solution.
Oh, so we have a virtual Jasmin and a real Jasmin. Okay, so tell me when you want to hit the play on the virtual Jasmin.
Yeah, that's great. You can go ahead and press play. Jasmin, and I'm a software developer on the Enhanced Search team. And today we're going to be looking at, is it possible to add a card color to board issues which have a subtask that is blocked by another issue? Okay, so on the screen here, I have a Kanban board. And there's a number of issues which are parents of subtasks which are blocked by other issues. As you can see, that's not very clear from what we're looking at right now. So we're going to add a card color for these tasks. So this task here, for example, is a subtask of this issue, and it is blocked by another issue. So we want to highlight the parent issues like this one, which have subtasks which are blocked. So we're going to do that today by using the Enhanced Search app. So if we head over there, and then we're going to click this Insert Function dialog box, which is going to give us a helpful list of our Enhanced Search functions. And today the function we're going to be using is called Parents of. So parents of returns the parents of the issues which are found by the subquery. And this is where we put our JQL query here. So our query, so because we want the issues on the board that we just looked at, I'm going to add the project equals, and then the key of our project. And then I'm also going to add issue link type here as well. And the issue link type is going to be is blocked by, so we can find those issues which are blocked by other issues. But our helpful Enhanced Search function here is returning the parent issues of those issues that are found. So once we've added our subquery here, we then scroll down and press this Add to Query button. And then we click Search to see what search results we get with that filter. And as you can see, we've got 2 parent issues which are returned here. So these are the 2 parent issues which we want to highlight with a card color in our board. So now to ensure that this is saved as an Enhanced Search filter, we need to click this Save as Filter button. So let's give this filter a name. Blocked children. And what we need to do is, if we're adding it to a board, we need to click our Sync Filter toggle, and we also need to click the Share with All toggle if we want other people to be able to see these cards as well. So we toggle those 2 on and we press Save. And once our filter is saved there, we need to make a note of our filter name. That's important, so I'm just going to copy that. And if we go back to our projects, Okay, so now that we're back on our Kanban board, we need to press the 3 little dots at the top right of the board now and go to this option called Board Settings. Okay, so when we're in Board Settings, we have a number of setting options here. We need to go to the Card Colors option. We then also need to make sure that we have selected the Queries option. So we want to add the card color based on a JQL query. So we need to make sure that one is selected. And then you can see this option will appear to insert JQL. So the JQL we want to enter in order to make sure that our filter is being used here is filter equals, and then in quotation marks, the name of our filter. Okay, so that's the name of the filter we just made. And that's all we need to put in there to add this card color to our board. We also need to select the color of the card that we'd like. So I'm just going to leave this as red, but you can select any color you like. And then we need to make sure that we press this add button on the right there. Now we can see that that card is active for our board. So if we click this button and go back to our board now, you'll see that those 2 parent issues are highlighted in red. So this one here and this one here. And that is how we add card colors to our board issues, which have subtasks which are blocked by other issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmin.
Thanks.
Anybody got any questions on that?
I'll just a note, I'll put the link to the video in the chat as well for everyone.
Okay. So moving on.
Jasmin
There
and
was one
Irene.
question, sorry, in
Oh.
the chat.
Go for it, Bobby. What was the question?
They're asking if we enter the JQL directly here, will it work? So are they able to enter the parents of function directly into the section where you add the boards?
So the function being used there is an enhanced search function. So we need to use that within the enhanced search app for it to work.
Okay. If you have any follow-up questions on that, or if that's not clear, feel free to follow up with another question in the chat, or send us a message privately and we'll take a note of your email address and come back to you. So Bobby, you're now up with your library script for search and replace.
Yes. So yeah, the question, I'm just going to share screen. The question was about search and replace, which is pretty common in your Confluence instance for widespread being able to say in this space, I just want to be able to go across the entire space and make some wide scale changes, whether that be spelling corrections or even if they're corrections on terminology of your business. So there is a library script that exists to do this. It's very simple and very straightforward to use. So rather than just watching you copy watching me copy paste it and just run it, I'm just going to talk through what it does, how it works, give you a bit of a greater understanding of it, and then how you can maybe modify it to your own needs. So, but first things first, let's actually just show you it working. So this is my Confluence instance. We've got some very simple changes here. All my stuff is lowercase. I'm going to change that spelling correction. So when I go to ScriptRunner, all I need to do is go to the script console, paste that script in here. I need to add my space name, so ITSM web at the top, when my space key is here, and the old text and the new text. So let's just do lowercase JIRA and uppercase JIRA. That is all you need to do for this library script. So if you press run, that will execute. You can see in the logs, this script is built to output logs on each page so that it changes. So whilst this is executing, you'll see here, these pages have been updated. And if we go here and we refresh, then all it's going to do is just refresh that JIRA to be the correct spelling. So that's pretty much as simple as a library script you're going to be able to use. But just to talk through how this works. So what this does is it uses a REST API call to get all of the pages within a specific space. So you define the space key here, and that is then put into this API REST call, and that returns all of the pages. When you get that page, you can access the body and the storage, which is essentially the text contained within the Confluence page itself in its pure format. And there you can use basic string manipulation to just do a replace. So you can replace X with Y, you can replace anything with anything using this script. And then once we've done that, all we need to then do is post an update for that page. So this loops through all of the pages, gets the body in the storage, replaces the text, gets the current version number. And then in this API call, we then go and increment the version number to the next version, because this is going to be a new version of that page. And we update the storage with the new storage that we've created with the corrections that our replacers performed. So the reason we're talking a little bit more in depth about how this necessarily works is because this, what this does is it gives you the ability to understand A, how it works, and B, where you can start to make modifications. So let's say, for example, that you access all the pages in a space, but you want to apply a filter. I want to make this spelling correction over this particular subset of pages. Then in here, what you can do is you can add checks into your logic to say, does this page meet my criteria for a change? If it doesn't, then I want you to ignore it. Else, I want you to carry on and do that change. So adding logic in here to make more. So for example, you might want to apply your logic to a specific page tree, etc. What you can do is you can add that logic in here between line 21 and 23 to accommodate that as well. That is this library script. I see there's some questions. Is it possible to do a preview, so simulate with the find and replace? Yeah, that is absolutely possible. In fact, let me just reshare my screen real quick. So what you could do is you could output it all into the logs, right? So here we actually update the page itself. We could just say, actually, I'm not going to do that. Instead, here in the logger info, I'm going to say this page has been updated. Here is the new body, and then include the body, the new content body variable that you've built. Obviously, this might not necessarily be very readable because it's going to be displayed here. And if it's a massive page, you're just going to get a really long line of text, but you can then copy paste that into maybe Word or Notepad to make that easier to read. But that's definitely possible just by actually commenting out the actual physical update itself. And you, by this point, you've got to that point, you know what's going to happen. You could just then log that information out. I think there were more questions. Yeah, Kristian answered that you could comment out, or you could add a Boolean to say true or false. Yeah, one of those two. Why do scripts logs contain more than what your script is logging? There's a lot of noise from the API clouds. That's good information. Yeah, that's the honest answer is yeah, true. We do log out when API calls are made. Maybe we could look at something that we could add to a flag to your scripts to say don't log this, or something that you can put in your scripts to say I want to see just my logs and not necessarily anything else that you think I want to know. That's definitely good feedback that we can take back to the team. Absolutely.
I actually have a little trick that I try, which is I prefix all my logger.info, logger.1 comments with that just makes them easy to spot amongst all of that, what shall we call it, noise in that respect. So that way you can then very quickly find those lines that are part of your login.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like something like this, obviously maybe a little bit more professional, but yeah, absolutely. It's something you could do. You'll still get those lines, but you can then easily visually pick out the ones that you've got. But that's a good piece of advice. And yeah, we can look at feedback in terms of you not having to do that specifically for that instance. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, and a Boolean, yeah, like Kristian said, a Boolean could do exactly that in terms of not actually actioning the update, but seeing what could come out.
Okay. Well, you now get to see me do a little bit of presenting. So this is connecting JIRA to Slack. And this is a very, 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 very shortened version of what was presented at Atlassian Day in Hungary, where we did a workshop for half a day, where we actually, sorry, a quarter of a day, where we actually took the concept of we don't have anything, we want to set up JSM, we want to set up Slack, we want to build an app, and we want to get the two talking to each other. So I could do an example which is very much about a IT support system, but I'm going to take it away from there, because what happens when I show any IT system, people always get hung up on, well, our system doesn't work this way, our system doesn't work that way. Why do you do it this way? So unless there is anybody on this call who actually manages a nature park and uses Atlassian to help them, hopefully this is out of everybody's comfort space and you're not going to say this is not the way in which we do it. So let's think a little bit about why would we use ScriptRunner when there is a native app? And here you can see what the native app for connecting with Slack gives you. And whilst these are all really helpful little messages that come through, they're not what I would call customer friendly. They're not what I would say are publicly friendly to somebody who's just used to using Slack. So how do we take this and make it better? Because that's where ScriptRunner can have the advantage. So let's just take a look at this last ticket that was raised, the one about the washed away road. And let's see how we can then change this in Slack to actually come through with a much more detailed message. And we can see here, it's still displaying the same information, but what it's done is it's brought it into a structured format and it made it stand out. So here we know it's a major incident. We still know it's a washed away trail. We've got various messages for the ranges, etc. And we've also got links to other information. So remember that your colleagues will be getting lots of Slack messages in a day. So you need to make sure that your messages are quick and easy for them to understand, but that they also stand out. And here we've used a clear layout, we've used emojis, we've built it for a specific purpose of declaring a major incident, and we've put a call to action to look at other details and where that's available. So how did we do that? And here I am going to play a short video just to demonstrate it in action. And this time I will remember to maximize the screen. Apologies for not doing it last time. And I'm going to hand over to the virtual Phill in this respect to do this. And here we go. Okay. Okay, so this is the virtual Phill, quickly running the demo. And what we're going to do here is we're going to follow a little story along from a customer, somebody attending the nature park, reporting a problem, then looking at that as an agent and how they would pick that up and how they would send a message to all the park rangers. So very quickly on the screen, you can see on the left is the customer portal, and on the right is Slack. And here I'm looking at the park rangers common messaging. So let's start by reporting a problem. This is just going to be a report a problem. It's going in general, it's report a problem. Anybody who's not familiar with JSM, this is all standard JSM functionality, nothing new there. So what we're going to do here is access trail washed out by summer storm. And we'll give it a simple description. And we'll say it's to the blue trail has been washed away. Now, lots of other stuff that we could do here. We could add screenshots, photographs, etc. But we're going to pick it up and say it's on the blue trail. So I now send that request. And you'll notice this is a customized site. What you will have noticed almost straight away is that message has now been created there. But as we said, this message is not really very informative. So we can see that this is VSM72. So I'm going to go into VSM72, which should just appear here shortly. I will let it refresh. There we have VSM72. Now, what we've got is, here is a standard JSM ticket. But one of the things we have under the actions is an opportunity to inform the rangers. What this actually does is it's a self-referencing workflow action that calls up a transition screen, captures the information from that transition screen, and sends it to Slack. So I'm just going to change on Slack as well. I'm going to change to the major incidents. So it's a different channel. You'll see that there's a previous one there from Friday the 21st of July. So we can see that this is the access date. We now have a start date, which we can populate, and we're going to say it happened yesterday. We're going to say what the text is that's going to go in the Slack message. And remember, you can have lots of things that go into the Slack message. You can build it up. There's a full API configuration set of how you can build and format your messages. So we're just going to put the message up. The blue trail is reported as being washed away. Any rangers close by able to check this out. And when I click the inform rangers, what we'll see is that will go off. And the message appears here. So all of our rangers can be using Slack out on the field, assuming that there is actually a mobile phone signal. They don't need to go into JIRA to do this. They've actually got the message, and I hope you'll agree that the message looks better. So there's a very quick demo. So how does this actually work? Well, let's go into the project settings. Let's go into the workflow, and we'll have a look at what this actually means and how it's actually set up. So in the project settings, down into my workflow, I'm going to edit it so that everybody can see it. And here is our self-referencing workflow, and the post function has within it a script, and that script is a ScriptRunner workflow action. If I edit it, come down. Here is the actual script. So there's a very quick demonstration of how we can use ScriptRunner for JIRA Cloud to interact with the API of Slack and send customized messaging. Okay, so being prompted that we're running out of time, so I'll go very quickly through my next few slides. So the technical details, what do you need to do? Well, you need to establish your environments, connect them up, and most importantly, there's a link in the chat which tells you about all of the formatting that you can do with the block kit builder for Slack, and there are lots of things you can do. You can play around with that and you embed it in your script. You edit your workflow, and then it says test once, but it should be test, and test again, because whatever you do, it won't be right to begin with, and it'll take some time to build it and then deploy it. So I haven't shared the script. We're not able to share the script with you today because we're doing some preparation, and this is going to be a future blog post. So make sure that you are fully registered to receive the links for that blog post, and you'll see how JSM uses ScriptRunner for JIRA Cloud to interact with Slack. And I'm hoping that in that little teaser that I've given you today, that's given you enough of an insight to think, actually, there are ways we could use that within our own service, whether it's for setting up war rooms, setting up major incident responses, communicating with different teams, lots of opportunities there for you to use Slack in a more efficient way. And for those of you who use Teams, not Slack, we're not forgetting you. That's going to follow in the future as well. And it's now back to Bobby.
Yep. Hello, me again. Just to, yeah, so I'm going to be piggybacking off what Phill just said there. When he said it's coming in the future, he means now. We're going to talk about how we can connect JIRA to Teams, but using Stitch. So for those unfamiliar, Stitch is our new integration tool. So it's a tool that allows us to create integrations between your different apps. So this is Stitchit. So what we actually have in Stitchit is what we call templates. So templates, managed connections and templates. Managed connections allow you to connect to tools simply and quickly, and templates give you pre-built code and workspaces that allow you to get your code and things you want running up as quickly as possible. So when it comes to Microsoft Teams doesn't have a REST API. Microsoft has a REST API. It's called the Graph API, and it connects to the Microsoft suite as opposed to a specific API for Microsoft Teams. That means that connecting to it's a little bit more complicated than Slack, a little bit more slightly painful. So I'm going to be using Stitch It to show you how to connect it to Jira, because our managed connection takes away that pain point. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm logged into Teams as my colleague, Maria. So the first thing to note is that when I make this connection, it's going to be making that connection as Maria. So when I invoke that connection, Maria is going to be the one talking for me. So if I go to create new under connectors and I select Microsoft, I'm going to call that is possible the connector, and I'm going to click authorize. At this point, Stitch It will take you through a customized process for connecting to Teams. So for this one, I'm going to be going for a fully managed Azure application. Here we get some instructions that your admin will need to follow for the first time. However, I know this has already been completed, so I can just go to next, and then I can just click authorize. Once that's done, it's going to use who I'm currently logged in with, that being Maria, to authorize that connection. Click save, and that connection is now done. I don't need to worry about connecting to Microsoft again. Now I can go to templates and I can filter by my Microsoft templates. And I'm going to be using this one here, receiving a notification in Teams about Jira Cloud issues you are watching. So I'm going to select this template, and here we have a README that gives me instructions on how to set this up specifically. So this instruction is very simple. It is literally just setting up the connections. So I'm happy with this workspace. I'm going to click create workspace. I'm going to give it a new name. Click create, and it's going to generate that workspace for me. Now at this point, I'm just going to take Teams over here so I can log in as myself as opposed to Maria. The reason being, as I said, because I've connected as Maria, the messages are going to come from Maria, and the API doesn't allow Maria to send a message to Maria. So I need to log out and relog in as myself. So that's going to take 2 seconds. But in the meantime, while that's going, I'm going to connect this up. So it's as simple as going through here, going to connectors and saying, I'm going to be connecting to my cloud instance, and click save. So now Stitch is ready to receive the event from Jira, and we have instructions here on how to set it up on the Jira side of things. So copy this, create a webhook for when an issue is updated. So I'm just going to do that here. I'm going to create a webhook. I'm going to call this, is it possible? I'm going to paste that URL in here, and I'm going to say issue updated. Click create. That's done. Okay, that's done. Done here. Let's set the connections up. So the Microsoft connection is going to be connecting to my is it possible connection, and the Jira Cloud connection is going to be connecting to my Arbeili demo connection. That is now done. So I'm just going to log in as, so I'm now logged in as myself. I'm going to go to this Jira issue. So this is obviously all my demos have been live because I enjoy paying. We're going to see if this works. So I'm going to set myself as watcher, which I already am, and I'm going to update this page. So I'm just going to add a description and say, hello, world, and click save. If I go back to Stitch It, we're going to see that we've detected that event. It's detected it. It's found a watcher. It hasn't found me as a matching user. So that is probably due to my email preferences. Basically, what the script does is it connects me via my email address. And I'm pretty sure on my account, I've actually recently set my email to be private for testing purposes. So unfortunately, I did fail at this one. 2 out of 3 isn't too bad. However, that is the logic and that is the setup. So if my email address was accessible, this would be able to connect me to my Microsoft Teams account and then necessarily go on to send me that message. Just to steal a little bit of Phil's Phil's inspiration as well. I have another example here, which I know does work because I was doing this about 30 seconds ago. We have the exact same thing that Phil had achieved with Slack. So here I have a workspace that I've created. In this script, we're listening for when an issue is transitioned, and we can structure messages using HTML in Teams. So what this does is whenever an issue is transitioned, we get a load of information from the issue, including the custom message from the transition screen, and we post it in Teams. So if I go here and I say, send a message to Teams, and I say, let's do hello world, and click send message to team. If I go to my teams and I go to general, we can see that Maria has just posted that message with the description hello world in Teams here. So you can structure that message exactly as Phill said, in a nice, more easily to read format using HTML. And that is the demo of Stitch It.
Okay, now Kristian is with us, but we get to have the delights of the virtual Kristian first, and then we have the real Kristian to answer questions afterwards. So I will hit the play and I will remember to backspace. Apologies for the fact we're running a bit late. We've tried to cram a lot in today, and we've obviously crammed more in than we could fit in the time available. So don't forget, if you do need to leave, you will get a link to the recording, and we welcome any comments and feedback in that respect.
Improvements that we've made to behaviours recently is to
You're not sharing screen, Phill.
code editor modal to make the experience of writing scripts easier and smoother.
Hey, Phill, you want to share your screen? Thanks.
We've also moved improvements that we've made to behaviours recently is to redesign the code editor modal to make the experience of writing scripts easier and smoother. So here we can see the newly designed modal, and some of the changes to point out are we've moved the onload and on-change checkboxes to be on the same line rather than one below each other. We've also moved the examples to be, instead of be a drop down at the bottom, to be a pop-up at the top of the screen, and all this means we can increase the size of the code editor for when you're writing scripts. And what we've done is we've added a link to our API documentation, which can be clicked directly from the top of the code editor, and this will take you straight to the API reference, so you can see what methods you can use within your script. And also we've redesigned how you can find examples to make it easier to get started with behaviours. So you can click on the example scripts button in the right hand corner, and this will populate a modal which has the examples which we currently have, and you can search for different examples just by typing text in, and they will filter in real time, and the search is case insensitive. And if you do a search and accidentally click off back into the script editor, once you click back on the example scripts button, your search query will be remembered and the modal will be populated with the same results. Also what we've done as well is we've given you the option now to copy the code to the clipboard, so you can paste individual snippets into different scripts, instead of how previously every time where once you selected an example we would overwrite the code box with that code. So we can see here, if I click this change display name of priority field, once we click copy code, we get a message saying the code is copied, and this will stay for 3 seconds just to give you feedback that it's been copied to the clipboard. You can then go into the code editor, hit Command and V or Control and V if you're on Windows, and paste in that example. And if I wanted to take the code from another example, I can simply copy that and then paste that into my script where I need it, and we're not losing any of the existing text that was in the script editor. So that's a brief overview of the UI changes we've made, and we hope it makes the experience simpler, and please let us know any feedback that you have.
Okay, cool. So that was a brief overview of the changes we've made recently. So if anyone has any questions, I can take them now.
Not seeing any, and we're short on time, so we're going to push on.
Perfect, thank you.
And so we come to the ScriptRunner Tour.
Hello everyone, I'm Kirsty. I'm the Brand and Events Marketing Manager for ScriptRunner. So the next stop on the ScriptRunner Tour is London on the 21st September, and this will be at our London offices in Shoreditch. where you can come and have your Is It Possible questions answered in person this time. You'll get the chance to spend time with the ScriptRunner experts. You'll be hearing all about JIRA, compliments, and get the first look at the newest member of the ScriptRunner family. We'll drop the registration page below in the chat now, so you can come on, register, secure your space there, and we can't wait to see you. So if you can just click the next slide, please, Phil. And that means the next virtual Is It Possible will be on the 31st of October. That's everything for me. Trying to be short and sweet. I know we're out of time. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat.
Lots of resources available in that respect. And we will be sharing all of this. So I'd just like to thank everybody who's been on the panel today, everybody who's been hanging around and making sure we behaved ourselves. Lots of stuff that we've covered today. We've tried to give you a whole variety of different approaches and different thoughts and answer your questions. If you have got questions, please do register them. We hope that you found today useful, helpful, and all of those things. We do take your feedback seriously. We saw that there was a question about Stitch It and why are we demonstrating Stitch in this session. Let's pick that up and answer that for you in a future session. But feel free to send us your questions, the things that are troubling you. What do you need us to address in a future session? And remember, take your autograph books along and go and see the likes of Bobby and Kristian and Jill at the in-person event in September. Thank you all for taking the time to be with us today, and we hope you found today useful.